Hello everyone and welcome back to Random Thoughts. I believe it's episode 90 today and I'm joined by James Cheers. And this is James's idea. We're going to talk, it's summer here in Australia. We've just had the Australian Open, so we're going to talk about all things tennis.
Yes. We've had just post Australian Open, we've had 2 tennis players in this week. We're going to get started with some strength training, so we thought it'd be a good time to start talking about a bit of tennis.
And talk about how strength training works, what makes good tennis players, what physiological characteristics are going on. I think we should start with the greatest of all time, Roger Federer, and talk about what makes him different.
Yes.
Did you get to see any of the Australian Open?
I didn't catch any. You can take the lead on this.
Too busy training for the triathlon?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I watched a few games and particularly the quarters, semis, and then the actual final. And the final was epic. I watched the men's and the women's. But Federer, he's just... If you saw him on the street, the thing that's interesting about a lot of sports is if you see a basketballer, they're usually tall and long. You can usually pick them. Rugby players are stocky and broad. Swimmers have long arms. Like there's characteristics that make athletes look certain ways.
Yeah, and world class at this.
And world class, yeah. Like you see a rugby player and go, yeah, that person, I'm not sure if they're good or bad, but I can see that they played that sport. Yeah. With tennis, you can't really tell from the outside.
No.
The serve volley guys you can, because they're long like basketballs. But for most tennis players, Roger Federer, other than being Roger Federer, doesn't look that different to a lower ranked tennis player or to just a general fit person.
Yeah.
I think tennis in a lot of ways is very much an all-round, complete package type sport.
Yeah, you're not limited by your genetics as much. Well, to an extent you are, but it's like basketball selects long limbs.
Yeah.
Tennis, you have a bit more freedom.
Exactly. And so there are tall serve and volley players. There are shorter, endurance type, defensive type players. Like you can work with what you've got on a tennis court to make yourself better in a lot of sense. We should probably start working our way through physiological characteristics and things that you need to be a good tennis player. Obviously, there's skill, coordination, stuff like that, but I think we'll focus more on physiological things. So it's more our area. We're not exactly tennis coaches, but we can make tennis players better through the other stuff. So I suppose we should start with fitness. Yeah.
Well, one of my athletes that came in this week that's just starting on the weekend, their number one goal was that repeat effort ability, just to be able to go and go. With that intensity and keeping that up.
Because it's a long game and you don't know at the start of the game, you don't know how long it's going to be. It could be 2 sets, 3 sets, Grand Slams could be 5 sets. You don't know. And points can go for an indeterminate amount of time. Like with sports like football, basketball, rugby, there's a clock. Half time is at 40 minutes. Quarter time is after 20 minutes of gameplay. Tennis, if it goes, 15, 40, and then deuce, and then you could go deuce, advantage, and you could be playing the same point for 15, 20 minutes if things go.
Wish I had looked up a stat in the longest tennis game ever.
It's like 9 hours. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
I remember watching a couple of years ago, I think it was the Australian Open. Might have been so long ago, it might have been Andy Roddick, and it was 21-19 the 5th set went to. Because you got to be up by 2, and so it just kept going.
And so you got to prepare for that. Like you have to be ready to have the cardio base to handle that.
Exactly. And so a lot of sports don't really need much of an aerobic base, but tennis is one of those sports that does need, you need to have a massive VO2 max and have a phenomenal yo-yo or beat test score to be able to go and go and go.
Absolutely.
Next, let's talk about hitting power.
Yeah. I was talking a lot with my athletes. One of them, they want to work on more hitting power, and I talked about their ability to rotate to begin with. Yeah. But if you want to have a strong rotational power, you first have to be able to rotate in the right places.
Yeah. If you can't get into good positions, you can't exhibit power from that position at all. Nick Wickelman uses a great analogy, the 3 Ps: position, pattern, and power. So position first is, can you get into the position? Do you have the requisite mobility and flexibility to, in the case of a tennis shot, whether it's a serve, extend over your head or rotate back into a forehand.
Yeah, using the right joints.
And not overloading your lower back, not overloading the anterior parts of the shoulder or your elbow, whatever it might be. And then you've got position, then you've got pattern, so it's coordination. Are you doing it in the right sequence? So are you using your leg? Are you getting your feet in a good position? Are you rotating through the hips and all that sort of stuff? Yep. And then the third thing is actually transferring power and strength.
And adding power and adding strength in the gym.
Exactly. So thoracic mobility is massive.
Big one.
So if you aren't extended through your thoracic and through your rib cage and then able to rotate through that area, that will, if you can't do that, you'll overload your lower back, you'll overload your shoulder, which in turn will overload your elbow. So elbow problems can be pretty common. We saw it with Novak at the Australian Open this year. He struggled a lot with that and last year as well. And then once you've got that thoracic rotation, you need good hip stability. So Eric Cressy uses the analogy of you can't fire a cannon from a canoe.
No, you got to have that strong foundation.
So you can have the world's biggest arms, but if your legs are floppy and if your base isn't good, it makes it very hard to hit a ball.
And core, just all around to protect that spine. You can have that strong foundation, you can have the power, but if you've got that weak midsection, it's just like a weak link in the chain. You won't be able to transfer that rotational power as well. It won't get from your hips to the racket as well.
So good legs into a good core, and then into, you got to have a strong upper body. Good rowing strength, good pressing strength. Good rotator cuff stability around the shoulder joint, just to keep the shoulder snug, because you're going to have to hit. Rallies can go for 30, 40, 50 shots if things are just going back and forth. So in those situations, you've got to be ready to be able to do a high power movement, hit a ball at 150 k's an hour again and again.
And serving into fatigue as well. You're putting huge amounts of stress on that shoulder joint in a very extended position. So you want to make sure it's nice and snug. All the right muscles are sort of keeping it in place.
Nice. And what do you want next? Agility, maybe?
Agility is a good one. That's another big goal that we get with the tennis players that we get in here. Just make me quicker. What I touched on this week a lot, I found myself talking about a lot, is just getting organised early, just getting the feet in the right position to be able to create power in the right direction. We got a lot of athletes that want to load into their toes and just sort of switch off that posterior chain. And they sort of need to get back into the glutes if they just want to use those glutes to explode forwards.
It's less about being on the toes, more about the midfoot, using as more surface. Don't want to be back on your heels, because that makes you less reactive, but using as much of the midfoot as you can to get good contact with the ground, so you can, you talked about being ready early, so you've got your foot speed part of things, movement of foot speed and quickness and timing and coordination to get you in a good position, and then create the power when you anticipate the shot, or when you predict, or when you need to go into the net, or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
When it comes to agility, James, what do you think are some of the biggest factors?
A good starting position, a good sort of athletic stance to work from, a position where you are nice and stable, and you can, at the drop of a hat, move in any direction.
A lot of coaches call that base. I've learned in the last couple of weeks, I've been digging into agility stuff, and they call that what we call base. So in basketball, it's your defensive stance. In tennis, it's your receiving stance. AFL, say you're at a ruck contest, something like that, it'd be your position around that, anticipating in a position where you can move in any direction, no matter how you like. So that's a good start.
The skill of actually reading the play is something that an athlete needs to work on, not in the gym, but the ability to have the body go where you want it to go as quickly as possible.
In anticipation or in reaction to a
you need that base, that sort of base position.
Brings up good point, actually, of the idea of sport-specific agility versus just general agility capacity that people talk about. Do you want to touch on it at all?
I feel that's hard for us in here. We can make it so that we can get you where you want to go faster through stronger muscles and more power and things like that. But targeting that in the gym,
I don't think you want to do it at all. I think you want to completely isolate out. People often talk about agility as, classically, the definition is whole body reaction to a stimulus, reaction and movement or change of direction to a stimulus. So you see the ball going straight down the line, you respond, and you go to the appropriate sideline and hit the return. If you were to try and replicate that with maybe, say, points or like a light or a left or right signal, you're in this weird no man's land where you're teaching the body to react, which is a good thing. You want to learn how to react faster, but you're reacting to the wrong and what we call a general stimulus or a generic stimulus. So it's not specific to, in this case, tennis. So we tend to focus more on, all right, let's focus on the pure physiology. So teach someone a good base, give them good mobility and stability, and teach them how to get low with something like a ROM squat, which is great to teach tennis players how to get down into a nice low athlete stance.
When cutting, where should the foot go? Where should your hips be? What angle should you be working at? Things
exactly,
like that.
The technical side of things. So like belly button should point in this direction, hips should turn at this point. You should put the foot here, like landing on the midfoot, all this sort of stuff. And then the next part is like that actual physiology. So strength, just getting brutally strong in both the frontal and the sagittal plane. So core lifts, hip thrusts, squats, Single leg work, like your single leg RDL and your single leg squat,
that stability through the hips as well. Yeah.
And then also your frontal plane work with lateral push steps, reverse gaze, so glute med stability, all those little guys around the hips that are going to help stabilize and lock things in, while the big power muscles can create the force.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's not, like, people then go, oh, that's not agility training anymore. Now you're just training. It's like, if you are stronger and technically more sound and you've got a good experience of playing tennis, you'll be more agile. It's not like they're isolated. When you go on the court or into training or into practice with your coach, that's when you integrate everything in.
Absolutely, yeah. And we can make that integration. We can, make that body move faster in the direction it wants to go. I find the thing, and this is tennis, yes, but it's also all sports, you don't want to go too specific too early. I think you want to, with juniors especially, you want to make a great athlete that can then go into any sport, rather than just coming in and working on tennis stuff straight away. Because we sort of get the parents and they want to come in and work on, let's do all these super tennis specific drills and agility drills and things like that. Like, let's just make a great athlete that's robust and moves really well.
You're still practicing your tennis. This doesn't mean stop playing tennis for a year to get good at soccer.
No, you're still going to become an amazing tennis player just by becoming a great athlete. But that doesn't mean you have to go down that rabbit hole of sort of super specific little bits and pieces.
And tends to actually just end up being confusing. If you're practicing your tennis work on the court and then you're doing all these tennis type or tennis-ish drills in the gym, it can actually lead to a point where you're in this no man's land where the athlete is neither developing their physiology and their technical agility things in isolation, but they're not actually practicing tennis itself. They're practicing these weird mishmash drills where it kind of looks like tennis, but it doesn't really look very powerful. It's just no man's land. So you might as well separate them out. On the court, you practice tennis specific speed, agility, play games, practice sets, practice situations. Then in the gym, get faster, get more explosive, get stronger, work on your technical
allow that to translate. If you're serious about sort of being successful in tennis, in any sport long term, you have to start with a good foundation. You have to be brutally good at the basics and then build on top of that. You can't skip that base.
All the best athletes, their skills tend to transfer across multiple sports. You tend to see them that, a good footballer is pretty decent at basketball, can handle a rugby ball, can play a bit of golf.
Months of training, they could push over to that sport or that sport, things like that.
Yeah. And so the same applies to tennis. And because tennis is such a repetitive sport, so it's all about, similar to things like golf, where it's execution of very similar skills repeated over and over and over again, and repeated at a very high level of accuracy. That can wear and tear. So elbows, shoulders, lower backs, they take a toll, and your change of direction things can take a toll on your knees and stuff like that. So being a good generalist before you become a specialist.
I know what you're trying to say. Specialist.
Sorry, haven't had lunch yet. Before you become a specialist, will be so beneficial as you hit, as you start playing more serious, look at things like college or looking at pro tours or whatever it might be.
That's one of the big things we try to teach all of our juniors. Just if they can get your head around that, this in here, the gym is going to pay us so much more, and it's going to help your sport long term a whole lot more.
So tennis, we've covered fitness, massively important to be both anaerobically fit, because your game could go for hours. You have to play high efforts. You got to be serving and hitting at explosive speeds for 20, 30 shot rallies. So there's fitness, there's hitting power, which comes from your rotation, comes from having a good solid base, strong legs, strong core, and obviously good, stable, strong shoulder with your rowing, pressing, rotator cuff work, things like that. Then we talked about agility, change of direction. So being explosive sideways, being stable, having a good base. James talked about being good technically as well as physiologically. What else?
I'm not sure. I feel if we hit the big ones.
They're really the big three.
The big ones.
Things like anticipation skills and reaction and actual game sense is beyond us. It's beyond the scope of today's video or episode. So leave that to your actual skills coach. Do you want to touch on some injuries?
What are the most common injuries in tennis?
Ankles are pretty common.
Just all that lateral work.
In terms of change direction. And that comes, so we've got a video and I'll link, we've got an article and a video, I'll link that into the description about how to avoid ankles. Overuse on knees is pretty big. So medial and lateral knee wear and tear, patellofemoral tracking, tendons, stuff like that. Very similar to all your other court sports. So you've got lots of change of direction forces, lots of acceleration, deceleration. There's going to be knee wear, there's going to be adductor load. lower backs, shoulders, elbows, wrists, anything involved in the hitting motion. So similar to sort of a baseball pitcher or a baseball athlete will have similar problems there. Anything involving the shoulders, there's usually some wear and tear going on because that shoulder is so loose. So the beauty of the shoulder is you can get up into a serving position, but then the downside of that is all that looseness can, if things go wrong, which they don't always, but if they can, you can create problems there as well.
If you don't have that ability to control the shoulder in its end range.
Or the strength or the range of motion, whatever it might be. Exactly.
I feel most of those, ankles, knees, and shoulder, can all be addressed just by building sort of good armor around the joints, like having a good VMO, having good glutes, having good a good rotator cuff activation, serratus anterior, traps, things like that. Just making sure everything's working the right way and decently strong, just so when you do put those forces through those joints, the sort of muscles are there as a backup to protect the joint.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I suppose the last thing to touch on when it comes to sports like tennis or any racket sport in particular is asymmetry. Athletes can get a little wonky, which isn't always a bad thing. And I would never suggest you should try and fix or eliminate that asymmetry completely, because that asymmetry is probably what makes you good at tennis.
Absolutely.
Having extra range of motion to your right, if you're a right-hander, is going to give you more whip on your forehand. It's going to give you more reach on your serve, whatever it might be. So you wouldn't want to fix that, but it can become a problem if it's left unchecked and it just lets itself run right.
And in the gym as well, as we start loading those patterns up, I like to tell athletes, sport is asymmetrical, as you can't get around that, and you're going to create asymmetries with sport, but tennis especially. But in the gym, when training, we want to try and minimize that, because you're already stressing those joints out a lot in that direction. We're going to exaggerate that.
You don't exacerbate and do more asymmetrical. So don't come to the gym and then do only I play right hand, I've got a one hand backhand, I'm just going to do right. You want to keep the left mobility right, keep the left generally strong, because that'll allow you to go heavier on your bilateral loaded things, which gives you better agility, better acceleration, better explosiveness and speed. And then same for your upper body. If you're doing something for your right arm, you need to get the left side. You know, it doesn't have to catch up, doesn't have to be exactly the same, but just needs to be brought along for the ride.
I wouldn't be concerned about asymmetry. I just wouldn't want to exaggerate it any further.
Until it becomes a problem. Or it starts causing any issues. So it rarely causes, like you see athletes like Roger Federer, how small his left arm is compared to his right. It's crazy. So it's certainly not going to limit your ability to be a tennis player, but may cause problems or injuries or niggles, which may in turn hold you back. So it's kind of the domino effect, I suppose.
You just want to keep an eye on that.
Exactly. Nice. So resources for today, I've got that ankle injury article. I've got a few articles and videos about thoracic mobility, which is massive for tennis. So how to sit with good posture, how to release off the shoulders and put them in a good position.
I think some cutting stuff and some plyo step stuff. We've covered that before.
Couple of little things on that. I'll try and find those as well. And that'll do, I think.
Yeah.
Any last
I would like to spend, because we're getting a rush of tennis players now, I'd like to spend sort of 6 months with them and come back and
maybe there's
go a bit deeper.
Part 2 in this on what we've learned training. Because we've got a handful in the gym. But certainly not our most dominant sport. So it'd be nice to see what we learn in the next 6 months training tennis players.
Absolutely.
Nice. Thanks, everyone.